Today we'll be doing the first part of our Native American folklore legend guided reading, How Crow Brought Sunlight to the People. The first thing I want you to do is take a look at these supportive resources. So under materials, we have a study guide of skills. So here, we have one place where you can reference everything you'll need for this guided reading. It has verb moods, active passive voice, figurative language, sensory language, MLA quote formatting, verbals, and advanced punctuation. Those last two we just learned since our last benchmark. So what I'm going to have you do is open this up, and then in the bottom left-hand corner, we're going to export this, and we're going to export it over to iBooks. That way we can split screen and we can have our reference tool open on one side and our guided reading open on the other whenever we get to it. So now this should be in iBooks. Going back into Canvas, we're going to open up our guided reading for How Crow Brought Sunlight to the People. Okay, Native American folklore study, How Crow Brought Sunlight to the People. This is a guided reading of an Inuit legend. So what we're going to do is we're going to read the first page first, and then we're going to go back and do some annotations using our reference tool. And then we're going to read half of our second page today and do the same. And then we'll come back tomorrow to finish part 2 of our story. Okay. A long time ago, when the world was first born, it was always dark in the north where the Inuit people lived. They thought it was dark all over the world, until an old crow told them about daylight and how he had seen it on his long journeys. The more they heard about daylight, the more the people wanted it. "We could hunt further and for longer," they said. "We could see the polar bears coming in and run before they attack us." The people begged the crow to go and bring them daylight, but he didn't want to. "It's a long way, and I'm too old to fly that far," he said. But the people begged until he finally agreed to go. He flapped his wings and launched into the dark sky toward the east. He flew for a long time until his wings were tired. He was about to turn back when he saw the dim glow of daylight in the distance. "At least there is daylight," said the tired crow. As he flew towards the dim light, it became brighter and brighter until the whole sky was bright and he could see for miles. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and open up our iBooks, and we're going to do a split screen here. So we have our study guide on one side and we have our guided reading on the other. Okay, so first it says, identify the type of figurative language used here. When the world was first born. So I can go over to my figurative language. When the world was first born. So we know the world isn't born. That's not something that is possible. We're talking about an inanimate object and giving it a human ability or characteristic. So this is going to be personification. So we're going to grab our annotation tool. Okay. Next up is also figurative language. Identify the type of figurative language used here. It was always dark in the north where the Inuit people lived. They thought it was dark all over the world. Okay, so here, this is when someone is using one small part to represent a whole, making assumption about a whole based on one small part. So take a look at this study guide, looking at your figurative language. Which term is used whenever a small piece represents a whole? Pause the video, take a look for yourself, and then restart and see how you did. This is called a synecdoche. synecdoche. Okay. Number 3, how does this detail exemplify or show qualities of Native American literature? Until an old crow told them. So based on what we learned with our exploratory web quest, we know that Native American literature often uses characters that occur multiple times in different pieces of literature. These are called archetypal characters. And usually there is a wise animal as a character who helps out the tribe or the people. So here, an old crow is functioning as that archetypal character. Okay, Native American literature uses the archetypal old wise animal and personifies him to help the tribe. Number 4, back to figurative language. Identify the type of figurative language used here. How, he, had. We have the repetition of an H or a H sound. So let's take a look at our figurative language study guide. The repetition of the same sound at the beginning of closely related words. This is alliteration. All right, here we're looking for a type of figurative language that repeats the same word or phrase at the beginning of successive clauses. This one's highlighted in your study guide. This is an anaphora. An anaphora. Okay, now we're getting into some verbals. So we can switch over to our verbals page. We know verbals are words that were verbs, but they've gone in disguise and are now functioning as other parts of speech within a sentence. So we have 3 types. Gerunds, they were verbs. They're now functioning as nouns. They always end in ing. This does not end in ing, so this can't be a gerund. Participles, they were verbs. They're now functioning as adjectives or descriptive words. Common endings, ing, ed, or en. So that won't work here. Or we have an infinitive, which is always to plus a verb. And here we do see that. Infinitive. Okay, so that's page 1. We're also going to do half of page 2 today as well. So, we are in this dark land in the north with the Inuit people. They think it's dark all over the world, but the crow tells them, no, I've actually flown to places that have daylight, and he tells them about it. And the tribe people want some daylight for themselves. So they pester Crow until Crow agrees that he will go and get some sunlight and bring it to the Inuit people in the north so that they'll be able to see. So he is flapping his wings, he is going a long distance, he's growing tired, and now he's there at the place of daylight. The exhausted bird landed in a tree near a village, wanting to rest. It was very cold. A daughter of the chief came to the nearby river. As she dipped her bucket in the icy water, Crow turned himself into a speck of dust and drifted down onto her fur cloak. When she walked back to her father's snow lodge, she carried him with her. Inside, the snow lodge was warm and bright. The girl took off her cloak, and the speck of dust drifted towards the chief's grandson, who was playing on the lodge floor. It floated into the child's ear, and he started to cry. Okay, so this is the piece that we're going to look at here. So things are similar to our trickster archetypal character, where we know that tricksters are shapeshifters and they can change from animals into objects and people. So here, Crow does that, so that's similar to something that we learned about in our exploratory web quest. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a verb mood. So let's go to verb moods in our study guide. Okay, this is our verb mood. So our options are imperative, which is a command or request, interrogative, that asks a question, indicative, which is a statement, subjunctive, which is a wish or an imaginary situation, or conditional, something could or might happen, but depends on something else. It was very cold is a statement here, so this one will be indicative. Okay, so here for number 8 is for my artistic folks. You're going to visualize the sensory language. So there's a lot of visual description, sensory language here in the underlined portion. There's lots of things that we could draw to help us visualize what's happening. So here you're going to choose a piece of the text and you are going to illustrate it in the box here. So you could either pick the chief daughter going down by the river, dipping her bucket in the icy water, and then Crow turning into dust and going onto her coat, her cloak. Or you could draw her walking back into the snow lodge, carrying the speck of dust with her. Or you could draw inside the snow lodge where it's warm and bright and the girl's taking off her cloak. Or you could draw the speck of dust kind of drifting from the girl's cloak to the chief's grandson floating into his ear. You have lots of options here. So I'm going to do a little bit of everything. So you can do this along with me, or you can pause the video and draw something of your own. I'm going to draw a crow kind of turning into a speck of dust, going on to the woman's coat. Got our bucket of icy water. I'm going to make the tent really bright colored because we know that this tribe kind of symbolizes daylight. Okay. We want it to be... Oh, it does mention that it's snowing. Snow Lodge. Alright. It was warm and bright, so I imagine this is like kind of having a fire inside. She took off her cloak, and the speck of dust drifted towards the chief's grandson. Okay. Do you see how I'm referring back to the text? Alright, so here's her cloak that she took off. Yours is, I'm sure, going to be better than mine. Here's the speck of dust. Now I gotta draw. I'm gonna put the chief's grandson over here. And then I'm going to show that the dust is going from the coat over here. And then we know that it floats into the child's ear and he starts to cry. So I'm going to do a close-up of our chief's grandson. Gotta give him some big ears. That way we can see the dust floating in. Okay, so there we got a little bit of everything. So this is what your guided reading text should look like right now. And we will come back together and finish the story tomorrow. So if you want to screenshot this just in case, and we'll save it. And then part 2 will go through using the study guide to answer the guided questions through the end of the tale.